Amid Africa's rising momentum, Rwanda shines as a symbol of transformation, built on resilience, ambition, and a vision for sustainable growth. Among those who have chosen to be part of this journey is Jonathan Schaffer, the founder and CEO of Fortis Green, a company leading the charge in renewable energy and sustainable real estate development in Africa. After 6 years of calling Rwanda home, the American national has invested deeply in projects that blend innovation with community impact. From solar power plants that light up rural towns to Masaka Views, a $25 million eco-estate set to redefine modern living in Kigali. Built on a rent-first model, Masaka Views offers inclusive housing with select eco homes priced from $120,000 to $135,000 US dollars for middle-income buyers seeking flexible financing and greener lifestyle. It is a vision built on sustainability and modern living. In this exclusive interview, we explore Jonathan's journey, Fortis Green's mission, and what it truly means to invest in impact for people, for communities, and for Rwanda's next chapter. So, Jonathan, thank you for creating time to talk to Ikihe. We much appreciate.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Please begin by introducing yourself.
Sure. My name is Jonathan Schaefer. I'm the managing director of Fortis Green Holdings. Have a wife of 22 years and 2 kids, aged 13 and 10.
I can see you're a family man. I want you to walk us through your journey to Kigali, Rwanda. It began 6 years ago. What inspired your move to Kigali?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. So I've been investing and living, working on the African continent since 2008, off and on. My first experience on the continent was in Sierra Leone, West Africa, where I lived and worked for almost 7 years. So very different experience than what we have here in Kigali, but really it's where I fell in love with this concept of, I'm sure we'll talk about more, of how do we use business as a way to make money, but also to make a difference in people's lives. And so I was back in the United States after our time in Sierra Leone. And my wife and I, there was always an expectation of really when, not if, we would come back to the continent. And the ideas for what is now Fortis Green were kind of swirling around, and we knew we wanted to be based in East Africa. And so it really was more of a family decision of, if we want to live somewhere, whether it be Nairobi, Kampala, Kigali, for the next 20 plus years as a family, which city gives us the highest probability of not burning out, right? Of really enjoying being there for the long term. Safety, security, pace of life, access to the rest of the continent. And really Kigali was the one that kind of shook out from that. So really for us, it's worked well from a business perspective, but it was primarily a family decision.
So how has been your experience around? 6 years is a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. If we want to use the language of calling, I wouldn't say that we felt called to Kigali initially. As I said, it was really more of a, hey, what fits? But now that we're here, this is really where we're supposed to be. Yeah. My wife is engaged at International School of Kigali as an administration there. Our kids are engrossed here. We have lots of, we have a wide community, lots of activities we're involved in. We love living in Kigali, and actually we're building a house right now in Kibagabaga. This is where we expect to be for quite a while.
You came in just a few months. You came to Kigali just a few months before COVID-19 hit. You saw it all. How has, since then, times have evolved? What is different from now that you used to see then?
Yeah. It almost feels like a completely different time and place, honestly. Yeah, look, for us, we landed here in January of 2020. So just a few months before COVID hit, a few months before the lockdowns. It was an opportunity for us as a family to, we spent a lot of time together. So we didn't see as much of Kigali and Rwanda as we would have liked to in those early days. But to see what's happened, or I should say what's continued to happen in this city and in this country since COVID, the recovery, and then the acceleration of development from a tourism perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, from a sports and entertainment perspective, it's really incredible. And frankly, it's an honor for us as a family and as a business to be in Kigali and in Rwanda in this phase of its journey.
As a businessman, what would you say is your most memorable, moment in Kigali so far?
Yeah, I think there's been quite a few memorable moments for us. But I think what just took place last week, kind of in late October, with the grand opening or the groundbreaking for our Masaka Views estate, really represents the culmination of a lot of effort that not only myself but our entire team has put in. And so, being able to host that event to celebrate the launch of not only the Masaka Views estate, but the overall Fortiscreen housing business in Kigali, I think that was probably the most satisfying event for me. Being able to celebrate all the work that's gone into getting us to this place today.
Great. And talking about Fortis Green, what inspired, the investment in green energy in Rwanda? And of course, you have also invested in many other countries, but let's talk about here.
Sure. So at a very high level, I think it's obvious I'm American from my accent. My goal, and really Fortisgreen Holdings, so the parent company's goal, is how do we get American capital to flow for investment into Africa? Right? So that's really the main problem that we're trying to solve, or the main goal that we have. But we want those things, that capital, to go into things that A, make money, because we have to make money for our investors, but B, make a meaningful difference in people's lives on the continent, and then specifically in Rwanda, which is where we are based and where the bulk of our investments are. And so on the energy side, really the number that's motivated us is 650 million. There's 650 million Africans who still lack access to electricity. That's an incredibly large number. That's basically 2 Americas. More than 80% of all humans left on the continent who don't have access to energy are on this continent. Sorry, more than 80% of the humans left in the world who don't have access to energy are on this continent. And so that's a problem that we believe we want to spend a long time trying to solve and playing our role in that. Now, in Rwanda specifically, Rwanda's energy situation is significantly better than the rest of the continents. There's a significantly lower percentage of people who do not have access to electricity, and yet there still is a need to increase capacity. There still is a need to increase access to energy in this country as well. So what's interesting for us in Rwanda is you have the combination of need, but also capacity and kind of institutional stability, right? So Rwanda is a wonderful place to invest because there's rule of law. Actually just came out, I think it was a couple days ago, that Rwanda is yet again #1 on the continent for rule of law, number 39 in the world. So there's significant comfort in placing capital into Rwanda. And there's also a significant opportunity for growth in the space. And we've got great partners in government with REG EUCL, at the Ministry of Infrastructure, RDB. We feel like this is a place that we can not only prove the concept, but also grow the business over time.
So 2 years ago, you entered into a partnership with Axian Energy to establish a plant at Rwamagana. What is the significance of that? What does it mean to you personally?
Yeah. So that plant was actually already operational, and we bought it from the previous owner. It was the first, what we call grid scale solar power plant in all of East Africa when it was originally established. So that's interesting. But what's personally compelling for me is the land on which that plant sits. It's on the grounds of a place called Agahozo Shalom Youth Village, which is today home for severely at-risk youth from across Rwanda. But it started as a place for orphans from the genocide. And when you step onto the grounds of that particular school/youth home, it feels different. There's something unique about the place. And so we get the privilege, honestly, of paying rent for the land that our solar panels sit on to Agahozo Shalom, and that goes to support their activities and operations. We actually have a couple employees who are graduates from that school. So we have a deep level of respect and, frankly, admiration for that organization, and are very excited, but also honored to be able to partner with them in this small way.
It's been 2 years since you acquired that place. So what has been, the development there that you could share?
Yeah. So we actually own 3 power plants in Rwanda. We own the solar farm at Agahozo Shalom. We also own the Rawaza hydropower plant on the Makungu River up near Musanze, and then we own a small piece of a project in Nyamasheke. And I think what I would say generally across all of our investments, not just the one at Agahozo, is once we acquire the asset, it's looking for ways to improve its performance, which obviously improves performance for our investors, but also increases the amount of power that can go to the national grid. And so at Agahozo in particular, we're focused on how do we increase that capacity to be able to increase the amount of power that we can sell back to the grid, that we can ultimately get out into the general population in Rwanda. And so we're working on a number of projects that we expect to take forward in the next year or so, which should increase that capacity.
And if you could mention the figures, what is the contribution of that power plant to the national grid?
The solar farm at Agahozo Shalom Youth Village is an 8.5 megawatt power plant, which is, it's a significantly large solar farm, one of the largest in East Africa.
Great. And now back to Masaka Eco Estate. When we met last time, you told me it is worth 25 million USD. What inspired Forest Green to enter into that project and, take us through that journey?
Yeah. So again, if we go back to what is our overall goal as a company of attracting foreign capital for investment on the continent, and specifically in Rwanda in the case of housing, what we're ultimately trying to do is we're trying to generate cash flow for our investors. So cash back to our investors while we make a difference in people's lives in the communities in which they live. There's a significant need for incremental housing units in Kigali. Somewhere between 20 and 30,000 units are needed every year to be built in Kigali. And there's a significant deficit over the last number of years in that. And so we see this is a part we can play in helping to satisfy the need for what we'd call middle income to upper middle income housing in Kigali to support the future growth of Kigali and Rwanda. And so, again, it goes back to what we talked about before, seeing Rwanda kind of overall as a safe and stable place for us to put capital in the context of a rapidly growing economy and accelerating kind of innovative society that we can play a role in. And so specifically in Masaka, the medical city is coming up there, new hospital, EarCAD, the new cardiac hospital, lots of new infrastructure and development being built in that region. That area is growing rapidly. And we now have the new road that's being built, the new highway, the Giporoso Masaka Highway. That again just increases the amount of people that are going to want to be living in that space. And so really we see ourselves as infrastructure, right? Housing as infrastructure to support the economic development that's taking place in that part of the city.
You chose a build to rent model instead of what we see in the real estate here. Take us through the features of the houses so that the viewers who are seeing it, hearing this for the very first time, can understand what the project is all about.
So this estate is on 7 hectares in Masaka, and it's a combination of for sale and for rent houses. You are correct. Our primary model is for rent, but we also include for sale as well, and there's a number of reasons for that. But at Masaka Views, we have 33 townhouses that are for sale. We've already sold, I think, about 25 or 30% of those. And then we have 51 single-family homes, which are also for sale. And so those are being built currently, and those will be sold over the course of the next 3 to 9 months. We also have, over the course of 3 phases, one of which is being right now, about 300 apartment units that we will maintain ownership of. So it's a very different model than most developers who build to sell. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just a different mindset. The way we view it is, we believe Kigali, Rwanda, and in this case Masaka, is going to continue to grow, going to continue to increase. And so by selling today, we are effectively giving up future value creation that's going to happen by the economy in this country and in the city continuing to grow. And so we're taking a very long-term view on Rwanda, and specifically on Masaka in this case. We're expecting to own this asset for a very long time. But the reason why that's interesting for us as well is it allows us to focus on community creation. I think as we talked about before, one of the things that we like about owning the asset and renting it out is that we can influence what that community looks like. We can influence the types of services that are offered to our residents. And we can focus on not just building and selling and getting out, but building, selling, and then really kind of living alongside our residents for a long period of time.
One of the follow-up questions I've gotten from people who have been seeing what we have wrote about you is whether the apartments will be furnished. So maybe this is the better opportunity for you
Yeah.
to respond to that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we'll have really three different levels in the apartments. We'll have an unfurnished apartment, kind of option, furnished, and then fully serviced. So depending upon what the family or the resident is looking for, we'll have options available to them.
Great. And take us through the time frame. When can people expect the houses to be complete?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are going fast. So again, another slightly different thing about the way that we do things is that we are the developer slash owner. We're also the builder, and then we're also the property manager. So we can control timelines in what we think is a very efficient way. So the first homes will be ready for move-in the first quarter of 2026. So the next, let's call it 4 to 5 months. The first apartments will be available for move-in in about 9 to 12 months.
And affordability and sustainability is at the core of the project. How are you balancing both?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, if you think about it, if we want to be here long term, our goal really is how do we build houses for sale, but then also apartments for rent that are attainable or affordable for the largest segment of the market as possible. And so what we're going to do over time is we're going to look to see how do we get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, not in terms of quality, not in terms of durability, but in affordability. And so, as we design these projects, as we think about building these projects, that's a huge focus. So for example, on the homes, both the single family and the townhouse, we have three options for home buyers. We can either sell them unfinished, meaning the shell is there, there's a basic kitchen, basic bathroom, polished concrete floors, but the home buyer can buy it at the lowest price possible and then can finish it as and when they want, right? Alternatively, we can offer a fully finished package, or let's call a more luxurious finished package. And so we're trying to find ways to work with home buyers to allow them to get into a home for the lowest price possible, but in a way that still obviously makes money for us and for our investors.
And another thing I've seen you talk about is these apartments, the Masaka Eco Estate. The apartments and the houses will be age certified. What does that mean to the common Rwandan?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, this is in this overall push for, let's call it green real estate or sustainable construction methodologies. And so the EDGE certification is a global certification administered by the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, which is part of the World Bank. And it requires that a development produce certain savings of electricity, water, and or carbon in your developments. So what they do is they set a benchmark and they say, in order for you to be EDGE certified, you have to create savings in each of those buckets. And so that means, water storage and reclamation, water recycling. That means sufficient windows and lighting such that electricity usage goes down. That means solar water heaters, and that means kind of carbon light building technologies, and that's what we've employed here at the Masaka Views Eco Estate.
Interesting. And also your projects emphasize wellness and community living. Why is this so important to you?
The reality is in 18 to 24 months, we'll have 400 families living in this estate. We take that very seriously because this is a place where families come after work and after school. This is where they spend their free time. This is where life happens. And so the goal for us is how do we create a thriving environment for them to live in, right? And so that looks like physical and mental health. That looks like faith and purpose. It looks like the environment in which they operate in, but also it looks like the community that we find ourselves in Masaka. And so, we will be developing and especially and rolling out over time a variety of programs, activities, things for our residents to take part in that hopefully will touch on each of those components of their lives.
If you could mention, what does that mean practically? Like what form of, wellness activities are we talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll be honest, we're still developing it. So these will evolve over time. But, for example, we're planning to have a public community garden in the estate, right? An opportunity for people to, even though they're living in an apartment, still get their hands into the soil, still be part of nature. It looks like potentially yoga classes, exercise classes on site. It looks like providing a space for external social workers and mental health workers to come and operate from. There's a variety of different things that we're thinking about, that we're developing, and we'll have more to share on that in the future.
That is very interesting. Coming to that, Rwanda's investment climate has been praised globally. What do you think makes it unique and ideal for investors like you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think there's a few things, and this is coming from someone who, we on the energy side, we currently have investments in 8 countries on the continent. I've worked in about 15 across the continent, and each country has its advantages and disadvantages. But one of the things that I really appreciate about here is a commitment to creating an environment where both domestic as well as international investors can invest with confidence, meaning meaning that laws will be honored, meaning that incentives that are offered by government will be honored, meaning that there will be a concerted effort to prevent corruption. All these things go into creating a sense of confidence for an investor. But in addition to that, it's doing what you say you're going to do. So RDB, other organs that are helping to facilitate investment, actually calling you back, actually honoring the meeting, actually taking the meeting, actually showing up on time for the meeting. There's a certain sense of professionalism. There's a certain sense of really urgency from members of government that infuses itself kind of all the way down into the bureaucracy. I mean, just as an example, I can set up a business here in 24 to 48 hours. That is unheard of on the continent. That's very unique. And there's no risk of interference with an individual asking for something out of the ordinary from a financial perspective. There's ways that we can get work done in an efficient way.
Yeah. And much of the capital that you are injecting into your investments here is derived from American investors. What are some of the gaps you see that we can do better to attract more investors?
Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot. And I do want to point out that, the vast majority of our capital comes from the U.S., but we also partner with local financial institutions. So for Masaka Views, we have debt from the Development Bank of Rwanda, BRD. But as we think about attracting capital from the U.S., look, the first thing that we have to overcome is that there's a particular view of Africa. First of all, most Americans view Africa as one country. It's one single block. So first we have to tell them that there's multiple countries, and there's multiple stories, and there's multiple paths that different countries are on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the vast majority of Americans, when they think of Africa, they think of war, poverty, famine, and corruption. Those are the 4 main things they think about. Those things are true in some sense in different parts of the continent, but they're certainly not true everywhere, and they're not true all the time. And so we have to tell a story that's not just focused on the problems, but that's focused on the opportunities. And so that's changing through the work of not only governments here, but institutions, investors. You're starting to hear a different story of Africa, but that takes time to change perception. It takes time for people to view risk differently. So that's, investors view opportunities through a lens of risk, and really, what are the risks and how do we mitigate those risks? And so that's what we talk about is, okay, yes, there is poverty, right? But poverty is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, right? As the middle class grows, that means there's more buyers for goods and services. That means there's more people that need electricity, there's more people that need housing, right? And so how do we change those perceived risks into opportunities? I think you asked the question of, what are the gaps? How do we improve that? Look, I think the best thing that can happen is that governments and institutions do what they say they're going to do, right? If there's a law in the books that says something, that the courts honor that, right? And that's one of the things that we love about being here in Rwanda is that is largely the case. And ultimately, we need more success stories. We need more success stories of capital coming into the continent and then capital leaving the continent through exits. And that will come in time, and I'm just excited to be a small part of that story as we think about increasing the flow of capital from America and from the West overall onto the continent.
Great. And we have heard about the milestones and challenges are also part of the journey. What are some of the challenges that you have faced along the way? How are you coping, or how have you managed to beat them, to be where you are today?
Yeah, again, if we remember, most of our capital is coming from the U.S. You know, it takes time to raise money. So, we have really two sides to our business. We raise money and then we invest it, right? And so what you see here on the continent is the investing side. What you don't see is the fundraising side. And that's a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of energy. And so that's a challenge, right? Helping investors outside of the continent in America to see the opportunities, not just the risks and the challenges. But through persistence and through, let's call it some luck, we've been able to do that. And I think we've got really great momentum to be able to increase that flow over time, which again is our main goal. Look, and then, I think the other challenge is anytime, as much, I've spent 6 years here. And as much as I would like to think I understand Rwanda, there's still a huge cultural gap that I don't fully understand. And I make mistakes, I make misjudgments, and our team in the US makes mistakes as well. And so it's just continuing to learn about the context in which we operate in, to be able to take what we want to do and what we think we should do and put it in the right cultural context. That just takes time. And that helps by having a great team around us. We've got about 40 employees now across the business. And the more that we can build up that internal expertise with folks from Rwanda, from the region, that just improves our capacity to execute as we go forward.
So, and also we have seen America and Rwanda collaborating more. There are even more plans to increase opportunities in business, trade, and everything. Part of it will benefit you as an investor in one way or another. You raised funds through the first green fund. You also told me there is a second green fund coming. Tell us more about that and how it will benefit the economy.
Sure. Yeah, so on the energy side of our business, we raise investment funds and then we invest them. And so we raised our first fund, what we call Green Fund 1, that is now more or less fully invested. We have 36 assets in 8 countries. Frankly, the bulk of our investments are here in Rwanda, but also in Kenya and then scattered in the other 6. So our second fund, the target for that is about $100 million. We expect to launch that early next year. And what it means for the economy of Rwanda and of the region is really it's a continued focus on increasing electricity output here in Rwanda as well as in the region. And so what we do is we invest in renewable energy power projects, plants. So actual hydropower plants, actual solar plants. And so we've got a pipeline of projects that we expect to invest into, both in Rwanda, but as well as across the continent.
Great. And when we met last time, you told me from your market research, you realized that there's a gap of 30,000 housing units every year, right?
Yeah, so that's actually a number that's been published by not just us, but also by the government and also research institutions, correct?
How do you see Fortis Green, filling in those gaps?
Yeah. Look, we've got a pretty bold goal and a pretty bold vision. Our goal is to build 10,000 units in 10 years. If we fast forward 5-10 years, my hope is that we are a trusted developer of high quality and well-priced housing here in Rwanda and specifically in Kigali, and that we're contributing to the lives of thousands of families across the city.
Thank you, Mr. Jonathan. When we are also talking about investments, we also look at the number of jobs that are being created from what you do. So maybe you could highlight some of the opportunities you have created for young people and even the broader economy from your projects currently in terms of numbers.
Sure. Well, so today within our organization, we have about 40 employees across both our energy business and our housing business. And then within the projects that we've invested into, so that's just at Fortis Green itself. Within the projects that we've invested into, Masaka views, there'll be between 300 and 400 people on that site every day in the next month or so, going forward for the next couple of years. In our energy projects at the Rwaza hydropower plant up on the Mukungwa, just south of Musanze, we have about 55 employees there. Agahozo Shalom, that solar power plant is much less complicated to run, so there's only a handful of workers there. But I would say the primary way that we impact the economy from a jobs perspective is supporting the core infrastructure that really drives the economy, right? And so that's really what we're focused on is how do we take American capital and bring it to bear on Africa and Rwanda's essential infrastructure needs, right? Because infrastructure is the foundation on which the economy grows. So without energy, we wouldn't have these lights, we wouldn't have these cameras, right? We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing, we wouldn't have manufacturing. And so really the way we think about our impact is yes, in direct job creation, but it's in the hundreds of thousands of households and businesses that are able to have access to energy because of the electricity that we produce. And then again, on the housing side, this is core infrastructure that's required for the Masaka Medical City to be able to operate in the way that it needs to operate. And as we continue to expand the housing stock in Kigali, again, it's creating environments where families, workers, et cetera, can live and then ultimately go out and impact the economy more broadly.
Yeah. And looking beyond Masaka now, are there any projects we expect to see soon? Any plans?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 3 or 4 more of similar size that we're developing. We're not in a place where we can announce those yet, but I expect we will in the next month or 2 start rolling those out. But I would expect that you'll see probably 2 or 3 more projects from us announced next year, and probably 2 of those projects starting construction next year.
Mm-hmm. You often speak about impact investing. How do you define impact?
Yeah, there's always 2 pieces to the equation. It has to make money, because if we don't make money, we don't get more investment capital coming in, right? So it has to make money, but for me personally and for everybody in our organization, it has to make a difference in people's lives. And so the way that I think about impact is, does it promote human flourishing? Does it promote human thriving, right? And that can look very different in lots of different ways. At a minimum, it's do no harm, but that's not enough. It actually needs to do good, right? So in the case of our energy investments, if you think about that number that we talked about before, 650 million Africans without access to electricity. 650 million. Again, to me, that's an injustice that needs to be solved, and that's why we're working there. And so we can tell lots of stories of individual people who have gotten connected to energy for the first time in their lives and what that means to them. I can tell you stories about businesses who now have access to reliable, stable energy because of the energy that we produce. It changes the way they run their business. It means that they can hire more employees. It means they can increase their output. It means that they can pay more in tax. It means that the economy grows, right? And so I think about our impact at kind of multiple levels. There's the individual level, but then there's also the macro level that we're contributing to.
Interesting. You also told me you are into hobbies and you have keen interest in basketball.
Yeah.
You know, Rwandans love basketball. We
Yeah.
love it from BAL and everything that is happening around, sports in the country. Walk us through some of the things you are doing here.
Sure. Yeah, we've got a lot going on outside the office. And as you mentioned, basketball is a core interest area. So I played college basketball in the United States, played basketball my entire life, and really was deeply impacted by not only basketball itself, but also my teammates and my coaches. And so, a few years ago, myself and another actually professional player here in Rwanda started talking about what would it look like to start what's called a house league in Rwanda. And all that means is that we get kids together, and over the course of 4 to 5 months, we practice during the week and we play a game every weekend amongst ourselves. So we split kids into teams and they play each other. That way we can control the logistics, we can control the timing, all those types of things. And so for me, the goal is, how do we improve kids' basketball ability? That's important. But really, how do we give them opportunities to improve as people? Right? How do we teach them about teamwork and leadership? How do we teach them about being coachable, right? How to be taught, how to navigate difficult situations. And so the Kigali Hoops League that we started about 2.5 years ago, now a little over 100 kids. We get the opportunity to play in some courts around the city. We play at Zaria Court on Saturday mornings. I would say it's probably the best thing that I've started in Kigali. In terms of its overall impact. Obviously, Florida Screen's fantastic. I love that. But in terms of a personal, kind of passion project, this is a lot of fun for me.
Great, interesting. We get back to where we started. You are a family person. you live here with your family, your wife and kids. What is the most memorable thing you remember about this place?
Well, there's a lot of them, and I think it comes from the fact that when we moved here, my daughter, who's now 10, was 4. My son, who is now 13, was 7. Right, so the bulk of their childhood has now been in Rwanda and in Kigali, and I would say we're just very grateful, very thankful for them to have grown up in this context. We've got rich community here. They've gotten opportunities to travel, to see Rwanda, to interact with different cultures. They have friends from all over the world. Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's lots of memories, but there's none that actually stick out. I'd say it's really more of a feeling. It's an overwhelming feeling of gratitude for them to be able to grow up and for our family to live here in Kigali.
And what kind of cultural values or cultural norms that stand out for you?
Here?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a general one. I think our kids are able to be kids longer here than in the United States. There's less there are less kind of pressures bombarding them. Not that there aren't pressures here, but they can stay kids a little bit longer, and that for us has been wonderful. Very grateful for that. And that's something that we talk about with our friends. There's maybe some fewer distractions for them. And of course, they're missing out on a few things by not being in the U.S. Of course, we miss family and friends, but the opportunity for them to grow up and to learn what it means to kind of navigate different cultural experiences, really valuable for them as they grow up, and very grateful for that.
Great. And as we finally come to the end of this interview, looking back, what would what legacy do you intend to leave behind?
Yeah, that's a big question. Here's the first thing that comes to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is that I hope that what we build at Fortis Green becomes a trusted and safe pathway for American investors to put their capital to work on the continent in things that will make them money, but that will also make a meaningful difference in people's lives. And if we can achieve that, then I feel like we've done our bit or our little portion of coming alongside businesses and investors in Africa as they seek to bring this continent forward.
And lastly, there are many people who are watching.
Yeah.
What message do you have for them in terms of your business and everything?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is an overall sense that we're here to stay. Right, we are not people who are coming and leaving. Right, we're building a lasting business and hopefully a lasting legacy here in Rwanda and here in Kigali specifically. And so whether it's our investor partners, whether it's our government partners, whether it's our homeowners and renter clients, there should be a confidence that comes from the fact that we are invested across this country in a significant way, and we intend to be here for a long time, and are excited to be a part of the story that's happening here, not only in Rwanda, but specifically here in Kigali.
Great. It was a pleasure meeting you, Mr. Jonathan.
Thanks very much.
See you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. To our viewers, we thank you for your time. We hope you found this discussion insightful. And until next time, it's goodbye for now. I was your host, Wycliffe Nyamasege.